Welcome. It's the 29th Phyllis Schlafly Collegians Summit. All these great speakers. I have to tell you, I hope you'll take an opportunity to go over to phyllisschlafly.com, go to our Facebook page, our YouTube page, share and like and pass this on to other folks, but also go back and as these interviews have been phenomenal. If you didn't see the early interview with Congressman Thomas Massey of Kentucky, extraordinary Congressman Jason Smith a few moments ago, and you know, this is all for these college students. We know you are out in the fray on your campus, and it's helpful to get the solidarity, the fortification of seeing these great leaders. Well, our next guest is actually right aimed in looking and talking about colleges and how to deal with it. Jennifer Kabbany is the editor of the College Fix. She's also, and I love this, by the way, Jennifer, she's a former associate editor of FrontPage magazine. I'm a big fan of David Horowitz and his team. They do incredible things, and David is just an amazing guy. And she is a Robert Novak Journalism Fellowship recipient, contributed to National Review, at Jennifer Kabbany on Twitter, and thecollegefix.com on the old internet. Jennifer, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's great to have you. I mean, we're talking to collegians in this college summit. We've got collegians here at the headquarters and then watching virtually. Jennifer, what's the biggest change for college students in the last 3 or 4 years? I know COVID, and that's one piece of it, and maybe COVID is going to be the overlay no matter what. But in the last 3 or 4 years, it feels like the wokeness has accelerated. And so how do you see that? And how do you tell collegians, hey, you are in uncharted waters, or you're in waters we've charted before? What is the state of play?
That's a great question. Before I get into that, I just want to say what an honor and a privilege it is to be here with you all this evening. My mom had got the Phyllis Schlafly report.
Wonderful.
For many years. I was reading it when I was in high school.
Oh, that's great.
And so, you know, it's such an honor to be here. Her legacy lives on, and you know, it's just great because the Eagle, now it's the Eagle Forum report, but when it was the Phyllis Schlafly report, I would just read it as a young student and take that knowledge with to the classroom. That I was armed with data and facts and knowledge to discern when my teachers and educators were trying to indoctrinate me. So I hope all the students are reading the monthly report. It's such great information and news. And,
well, let me encourage you, Jennifer. We were talking about Phyllis Schlafly, our founder, and the late Phyllis Schlafly. The one thing that she would talk a lot about was she was always a writer. Before she was a speaker, in terms of her advocacy, she was a writer from an early age of her life. She did an interview with the Lincoln Presidential Museum in oral history, in which she talked about a teacher when she was 14 years old, I think it was, who gave her an assignment to write a paragraph every day, and she did it. And Phyllis, in some sense, said she never stopped writing. She was a writer, was writing a column right before she passed away. So she would certainly appreciate that you were reading the Phyllis Schlafly report, but also that you're now a writer. So back to helping these college students.
Absolutely. So the college students, conservative, right of center, libertarian, Christian, Republican, Trump supporting, all of the above college students, they are pariahs on campus. They're under tremendous pressure to toe the line, to stay quiet, to keep their heads down, to keep their mouths shut. You know, we're in a world where there's bias response teams active on so many college campuses nowadays, where anything they say or do that might offend their peers, they might be hauled into the dean's office, get a talking to, get a re-education.
Right.
They're really under a lot of pressure to basically keep their heads down and their mouths shut, unfortunately, which is the opposite, the antithesis of what college and higher education and the Socratic method, a classical liberal education, is all about, unfortunately.
Do you think, Jennifer, it's gotten dramatically worse? You're a young woman. I got to be careful how I do this. It's like a politically incorrect, even before wokeness. But you're a young woman. You're closer in age to college than me, dramatically. Is it worse today than it's ever been? Is it better today than it's ever been? Has the Me Too movement, some of its missteps and some dramatic kind of overreaches, made it better? How do you read that? How do you feel about that?
It's much worse than when I went to college. I went to college in the 90s. I'm a lot older than you might imagine. And it was a carefree time. There was no such thing as microaggressions
Right.
or white privilege. Nobody was talking about that. Gender fluidity, a concept outskirts of the national conversation. So, trying to maintain good, hey, having to, go into the kegger or what have you. I mean, it was a carefree time. And in the last 2 decades, and primarily the last decade, with critical race theory and some of the other trends that we've seen, cancel culture, just college is a downer.
Yeah.
And there's so much pressure to, again, the conservatives and the center right kids are the counterculture now, because all the left progressive students, they control the campus, they control the student governments, they don't disagree with anything their professor says. So it's really difficult as a young conservative Republican to have a successful and fun time in college, because if you say or do anything that your peers, I mean, you're called a racist. Again, perhaps you're reported to the bias response team. So, young people need to be courageous and brave when they take on these debates and conversations on campus.
We're talking with Jennifer Kabbany, at Jennifer Kabbany on Twitter and thecollegefix.com on the internet. Jennifer, how do you specifically counsel young people to fight back? I mean, again, your mindset, when I see your writings, also from your time at FrontPage Mag, I mean, college kids want to, they want to be, we've talked about this quote, the battle, sir, is not to the strong alone, it's to the vigilant, the active, and the brave. They want to be active and vigilant and brave. How do you do it? What are some of the steps? Maybe pick a topic on race. If you're on a college campus and you critique Black Lives Matter, you're almost asking for trouble no matter how you do it. But is there some sort of way to think about being more, skillful, or knowing where the fight is coming from and encouraging people how to get more solidarity and to get more help to do it?
Yes, so I think a lot of it has to do with the particular student. The student may want to take a more aggressive approach, or they might want to take a more thoughtful, intellectual approach. And there's a variety of ways that they can tackle controversial subjects. When I worked for David Horowitz, he's not going to back down from any debate.
Right.
And that's one way that students can tackle these issues, is come armed with facts, with data, with logic. We've all heard the expression, facts don't care about your feelings. And so, one approach is to just hit them with fact after fact after, point out their logical fallacies, and really just try to reason with them on a very, fact-based discussion, so that they're thinking with their head instead of their heart.
Right.
And that's one, aggressive approach that you could take. But there's other students who may not be comfortable with that method, and they might just want to take a more soft-spoken approach, join some campus groups, be a part of Strength in Numbers, help organize these events. And maybe they're not the spokesperson, but they can add support to the students who are willing to step up into the fray and take those fiery arrows. So it really depends on the student's personality and what they're comfortable with. But there's all sorts of ways, from the more quiet students to the more outspoken students, to get involved in a variety of ways to fight the narrative on campuses.
Thecollegefix.com is Jennifer's website. What about the race question? How do you actually? It's like the third rail. It's like the way to shut everything down is have somebody call you a racist, and everybody kind of runs for the hills. Is there a strategy on that? I actually had somebody tell me about this, that it's just not worth the trouble, because you can't win. Once you're in that fight, and Phyllis, the late Phyllis Schlafly, used to teach that, how you frame the argument, who gets to set the terms of the argument, kind of gets to pick who wins if you're smart about it. And I think the racial thing is almost the hardest one on college campuses.
Okay, well, here's the reality of the situation. If you voted for Trump, you're already going to be labeled a racist.
Right.
You're not going to win. You're going to be called a racist no matter what you say or do. If you vote Republican, you're ipso facto racist. So you just might as well get over it, because the term doesn't have any strength anymore. Look, in the 90s, when I was at college, if somebody called somebody a racist, that was a serious accusation. That was a serious,
right.
and it really did rock people's world. But nowadays, it's so ubiquitous that basically anybody who's a conservative, a Republican, or a Trump voter is a racist. So you're like, yeah, it doesn't have any water. It doesn't hold any weight anymore. I mean, just get over the fact that they consider you just by the very fact that you're a Republican, and don't let it get you, because the accusation no longer holds any sway or power, because it's just too common now. I mean, if everything's a racist, then nothing's a racist.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I think that probably is true. Although it's hard to learn that. I think you probably have to. It's great to hear you say that, because I think you're right. And young people may say, "Oh, get frozen by that," but that is sort of the reality. If that's the name you call everybody, it's the little boy that cried wolf. It doesn't take. What's coming next? I mean, how about transgenderism on college campuses? How about the women's movement? I mean, the Me Too. I mean, Me Too sort of faded. Transgenderism, though, I think you can get in trouble for that, can't you?
I would like to tell the students in the audience is you do not have to give your preferred pronouns. You can politely decline to give your preferred pronouns. Nobody can force you to play the game. Again, just politely decline what your preferred pronouns are. So I think turn the tables and remember that we have rights. We don't have to agree to their narrative. We can agree to ours, and we can just say, I politely decline mine, and don't play on with this game of like, am I a woman? I mean,
yeah.
Of course I am. Look at me. So I mean, this is silly, and encourage students to stay along.
I do think that sort of ridicule is also a great tool, and I will just tell you this. And I was reading an article where the main thrust of the article was calling an individual they and their, and I was confused by it initially, and then I caught on that that's what it was, and so I was like, okay. I was trying to continue reading, and then they interviewed the actual person, and their, I use that intentionally, called themselves I. But if you're a they/their, don't you have to be like a we? I mean, don't you have? If you're going to go plural, you got to stick plural even when you're interviewed. So once I heard that, that's when I figured that I could stop. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I was like,
No, trust me. Individuals who identify as their constantly in regular refer to themselves as I. So this is about control and power, and especially at public universities, do not need to play along.
Couldn't you really shake the system though? If, for example, I was a college student, I might have done this, and like one day a week I'd be a they there, then the next day I'd be a she her, and the next day I'd be a he him, and then one day an it. What is it? It's, I don't know what it would be. And you could just change every day. And you could even, I think the rules allow you to do that. Can I identify as an African American woman for the purposes of my anthropology class? I could, couldn't I?
Really, that's the one thing you can identify as.
Oh.
I learned from Rachel Dolan.
Dang it.
The one thing that you cannot be is a woman. I'm sorry. But everything else, a purple dinosaur, a bunny, that's all okay.
Okay.
No, you're right. And in fact, one young undergrad from the University of Michigan a few years ago made headlines when he changed his pronouns to His Majesty.
Nice.
So, yeah,
see?
Laughter is the medicine.
That's right. I think so. All right. Well, read Jennifer Kabbany at thecollegefix.com, at Jennifer Kabbany. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for fighting the fight. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much. Any students are interested in writing for the College Fix, email me. A way, as Phyllis Schlafly said, writer, it parlays in the air. So I'd love to hear from some of your students. They're interested in journalism.
Great idea. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate it. Okay, everybody, we'll take another break. We'll be back. We got a few more segments and more people to talk about. And don't forget, please visit phyllisschlafly.com, as well as go on our social media, share it, like it, pass it on, and get the word out there. We'll be back in a moment.